If you're a Pittsburgh baseball fan, then this is the podcast for you. Make your way down, grab a beverage, and get ready to talk Pirates with myself, Craig Toth, and Scott Jackson, two of the biggest fans you'll ever meet. This is Bucks in the Basement.
Now I see the changes in this town. They change, they say one thing, but then the next day it's different. They change, but they don't know what they want. All they do is change. Going left, going right, travel day, travel night. That's where we'll go. No excuses, no goodbyes, no one cries, no one lies. We'll never know.
We are only a week into the season, and already there are some pretty big headlines out there. Things that have been going on, players getting demoted that we probably thought, yeah, we talked about it, but was it really going to happen? We're going to get into all of that. But first off, Scott, how you doing today, brother?
I'm good. It feels like baseball weather out there. I think we almost touched 70 degrees today. And we won't talk about the snow that might be on its way up here, but I'm ready for the home opener. I'm ready to welcome some torpedo bats to Pittsburgh, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, man, we're going to talk about the torpedo bats. I'm pretty sure we'll get into it at some point in time. But for the Pirates, it's like I said, it's been a pretty headlining week. Last week when we recorded, we didn't know what was going on with Nicky G. Didn't know if they said, an ankle injury. Some people were even like saying maybe a cramp or something like that. Come to find out, non-displaced fracture. In his talk with the media, Ben Cherington was pointing more towards like about an 8-week mark. And I mean, I don't like to compare myself to athletes, these finely tuned athletes. I mean, I got a pretty good beard. He's got an amazing mustache, but a finely tuned athlete. It took me about 12 weeks to really start to ramp up and get running again, run about 4 miles a day, 6 times a week. It took me almost, I'd probably say another 4 weeks after that to really get back up to that. It's not good news. We were really looking forward to see what Nicky G could do this year. Going to have to wait on that a little bit.
Another one of those examples where Ben and Cherington comes out and just like Spencer Horwitz was like, well, we think he's going to contribute this year. It's like, well, don't say it like that, because that just makes me think that there's a chance that he might not. But we always try to be glass half full here, and I always try to look on the bright side of things. But with a lot of the things that we've seen from this front office, you got to do your due diligence, because he fouled some balls off his foot or off his leg or whatever, and there was a report that that happened, and that maybe he was a little tender from it. Wouldn't you think that just out of an abundance of caution, you would at least look into that and not wait until he is hobbling around the bases in the in the opening game of the season, and he's running around the bases on basically a broken ankle, a broken leg. You gotta stay ahead of some of this stuff. You have all the resources, you have the equipment, you have the personnel. It's not like you're, on some kind of terrible insurance, high deductible insurance, and it's going to cost you a whole bunch of money to go do that. Just get it done. And it's a professional sport. It's one of the major leagues in America, and they play it cheap on everything. And come on, let's be professionals here. Let's act like we're the big leagues. Let's take care of our investments. And that this is part of that. Maybe some of the cracks starting to show, not just among us, but the entire fan base, because these frustrations and these kind of things keep piling up.
Yeah, and especially if I'm talking about, and Charrington even mentions like the 8-week mark, and thinking to myself, I'm like, I mean, I'm not great at math, but it was well over a week after that occurred until actual imaging and stuff was done. I mean, that's a full week within the season that you can have him back. So that's like a very frustrating part to me. I mean, I did give the media a little bit of crap the last time, but I did realize that, the Jared Jones news dropped on that same day. DK's big financial report, which was, circulating all over everywhere, came out there. But then, after the injury, I read Greg McAfee's story over at DK and basically said, after that game, he had, on the 19th, he had ice on his foot, his ankle. So, yeah, I mean, to me, it's like, just go get it checked out.
Yeah.
And especially like Shelton's comments to me were just like, we were trying to look to see earlier in the game, like how he was moving. Like, if you're that worried about a player and this player is fairly important to your success, a guy who, has had some time in the majors, but gets his first nod, his opening day start, he is your second baseman. I mean, obviously you had a little bit of backup and depth in Frazier. You also have, York down there, slide Triol over, whatever it may be. But I mean, you were going to give him what looked like to us and to everybody else a pretty solid run at taking a hold of that position, aggravates it or whatever it may be on a home run. Yeah, to me, that's like it's the little things.
Yes.
Like we talk about like and Shelton even talked about like, living within those margins, and you kind of have to do everything right. We've talked about, this whole offseason about the small ball and where the power is going to come from and all this kind of different stuff and playing good defense and everything. Well, this is another one of those things of like being within those margins is like catching something early so somebody's not out as long. Who knows if it was fully, displaced fracture at that point in time. If it was, could heal quicker, whatever it may be, you never know. And then you have him going out there for, 8, 9, 10 days and putting full weight on it and full running and full everything and motion. Yeah, I'm a glass half, we talked about when us, a full, type of guys. But that's where like my frustration comes in. Yeah, I mean, the easy low-hanging fruit is to talk about, who you sign in the offseason, different things like that. But if you have a guy that is this important to the success of your team, like handle that with kid gloves. Don't handle it with, oh, he's a veteran, he knows his body type of gloves. I mean, it's just very weird to me.
Maybe he'll go full Kurt Angle. I hit a home run on a broken freaking ankle.
It's like, yeah, it's just really, kind of weird stuff to me. And that's not even the biggest news of the week. I mean, not even like by far. I was at work on Tuesday. I had gone out for a walk. It was a nice day, just wanted to it's the only day I go into the office, but walk around lovely downtown Beaver Falls and, check out the sights and sceneries there and everything. And it pops up on my phone. And then immediately my brother-in-law texts me and he goes, Bednar to AAA. And I was just like, I can't believe they did it. Like,
And it's not an April Fool's.
Yeah. And it's not an April. It was, yeah, that was the biggest thing to me is I'm just like, okay, I'm going to check every single reporter, every single everything. Like, okay, this would be a terrible joke to have, but yeah, I mean, Bednar to AAA, it's a very weird thing without an injury designation, without anything. Like, it's just straight up, you're in Indianapolis, man. What were your thoughts about that when you first saw it?
I was disappointed in the Pirates social media community where so many people were saying, he's done, he's cooked, he's a bum, let's get rid of. I want what's best for the organization. I want what's best for the player. You know, we saw, Toronto last year or the year before with Alec Manoah. When Alec Manoah was having all of his problems, they sent him down to rookie ball.
Yeah.
And there was some more, extenuating things there. But, you know, what it, putting him on the developmental list might not be, too far off. Just if this isn't working out at AAA, just get him down, get him in the machine. We're working with the machines, get him, eyes on him. There is something wrong with David Bednar, and if it's fixable, they need to fix it. Yeah, because he can be a huge part of this team, and you hate to put so much pressure and hang your hopes on one player so much, but a healthy and reliable David Bednar could completely change the season for the Pittsburgh Pirates. Because if they can close out these games, there's not going to be a lot of offense. We've been talking all spring training about this. There's not a lot of offense that's going to be produced through power or whatever, but they have to limit the runs that they give up, and the bullpen is the weak spot in that. In all the losses that they've had so far, at least up to maybe that second game against Tampa, the starters would leave with the opportunity to win the game. We were scoring enough runs early in the games, and the starters were limiting, and we knew that the rotation was going to be a strong point of this team. And then the bullpen continues to blow it, which again is a major point of frustration because you're seeing a continuation of the things last year that they've had 6 months to figure out and fix, and you're seeing a continuation of that. And so if Bednar, I'm hoping the best, and I think that if that's what's best for him to get down there and get coaches on him and less pressure, and if he can figure out what's mechanically wrong with him, and if that means that there was something between the ears that had been challenged or maybe some doubts crept in, if he can get that all ironed out, that could change the fate of the entire season.
Yeah, and we had talked about, that I felt like there was like, last year you had kind of like Aroldis Chapman to kind of pick up and fill in that role to a degree. I mean, Aroldis is a guy who, I always felt like he walked too many people to be like a full-time closer, but, he's also a guy that was throwing 103, 105 miles an hour, and you don't really have that right now. So it was a little bit more of a fallback, to a degree. But I felt, with the amount of depth here, you're seeing like Baraki throwing well, Dennis Santana throwing fairly well, Caleb Ferguson, throwing well also. So I felt like there was, if one guy wasn't doing it, you would at least have more guys if they were willing to do that, to kind of throw them into that position. But for me, like the first thing I did, and not that I think that we're geniuses or I'm a genius, I was just kind of curious with David Bednar because we did something. It was like back in, I think it was like September or so. We were talking about and getting some early discussions. It might have been early October about some arbitration stuff and what might be wrong with David Bednar. The first thing I thought of to myself was, okay, I had looked at 2022, 2023, the release points, the tunneling. It was something that Alex Stumpf had written an article about, and I wanted to go even deeper into that and just try to figure out what was going on. The long and short of it is that, back in 2022, 2023, David Bednar was releasing most of his balls, both his most important pitches, his curveball, the four-seam fastball. He was releasing it from about 6 feet or above for each of them. Last year, the fastball, he was still releasing it at 6 feet. The curveball was, I think it was like 5 feet 9 inches. So wasn't doing the same mechanically where he had been very consistent previously. So I'm like, you know what? It wasn't that many pitches. I'm going to hop on StatCast, look to see what it is. At this point in time, well, guess what? He's throwing them both at the same level and from the same slot. He's throwing both of them an average of 5 feet 7 inches. So it's definitely like it's a different arm slot. So there was something, I don't know if it was something mechanically they tried to work with him, if it's something he's falling into. But I just look back to like, what's the little things that you're doing during your successful season, and where you get that same arm motion, you're pitching the same every single time. Well, yeah, now he's doing that. And I even said, like, because I went back and listened to that portion of that episode, was that, I mean, he had dropped down, say, at least 3 or 4 inches from the previous spot where he was throwing his curveball. Well, now he's almost like 6 inches full down. Like that's like an arm slot change to me that he's using. And maybe it's something he's not comfortable with. Maybe it's something he has to get used to. I mean, obviously bouncing a ball in front of the plate is, not something you would normally see him do. So yeah, he has to locate those pitches, do different types of stuff. For me, like, it's like, okay, was there a change made? And, to try to fix the struggles, or is it something he's doing mechanically because of the struggles he's having? So I don't really know. It's something I wanted to throw out there, just because, anytime there's like that drastic of a change, like in baseball, 6 inches on an arm slot that's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, get him somewhere where he can work on it, where the pressure's off. He can still get in game situations, and just that next level down of competition, and get on a roll. And maybe he figures it out and builds some confidence, and really starts mowing guys down at AAA, and maybe we see a rejuvenated Bednar come back up to Pittsburgh.
Hopefully, man. I mean, that is like the ultimate goal. I mean, obviously, because if our players are good, and here's the thing is, and this is coming from a guy who wanted to trade Bednar. You go back and listen to it at the 2023 trade deadline, and pointed out the reasons for that, for the struggles he has even in those all-star seasons because of his back, putting too many guys on base. If you have him even at what he was in 2022, 2023 in this year, even with those struggles, the amount, like you said before, what he brings to that team, the number of wins that he can add. Yeah, I want to see that happen. I mean, it kind of like, the season becomes a little bit jumbled if it doesn't. And the same thing's happening. I mean, not to just like, jump all over the place with subjects. We're talking about like injuries and stuff. We're talking about the Nicky G injury. Bednar, obviously not an injury, but then, you don't see Kutch in the game for like 3 days. Brian Reynolds is DHing. Come to find that, he's having trouble throwing the ball. He's got some sort of tricep injury, and he's not hitting the ball well either. I mean, he's a normally slow starter, except for, I think we talked about this before. I know like a 2023 season coming out like fairly hot for the first week or so. But yeah, I mean, just can't play the field, not getting Kutch his at bats, and Brian Reynolds, other than having that RBI on opening day, and whether or not maybe the injury was aggravated after that. Yeah, he's pretty much, his default setting right now is ground out to the second baseman, first baseman, or strike out. It's been really weird for Brian Reynolds.
And that's why it is a two-pronged problem, because you're taking the at-bats away from Kutch, who had a bomb and who was getting on base, and now you're sacrificing that for a hurt Reynolds, because you're giving Reynolds the prior. And Reynolds has always been your horse and consistent, and you know what you're going to get by the end of the year with Reynolds, but he's leading the team in strikeouts, and he's not himself, can't play in the field, and you're losing your McCutcheon at bats because of it. Are they? Maybe that plays into. I saw some video very quickly on X of McCutcheon taking some ground balls at first base, and I know that they're all about positional flexibility, and in high school ball, and he's far from high school ball, but everybody had an outfield position, an infield position. And you did your workouts there. So maybe it was just a routine thing that we just don't see, and because of the situation, it's magnified. But wow, would that just blow your mind to see Andrew McCutcheon starting at first base for the Pittsburgh Pirates?
I think that Shelton said after the game that he was just kind of goofing around. But I mean, but who knows what would happen? Because my first thought about that was, I believe it was Jason Mackey. I don't know if it was last offseason or the season before, got a lot of flack because he wrote an article and he said, would it be so bad to move McCutcheon to first base? So, I mean, it created some stir, some buzz, but I mean, honestly, like, he was a guy who was, even when he, was getting outs, just kind of like, even like last year, it continues to stroke the ball very well,
Yeah.
and so that's like my thing right there is like, yeah, I mean, I don't know if you take any more of those games, in Tampa if McCutcheon's in there, but I mean, I would have felt a little bit more comfortable with him being in there after finding out that you're playing an injured or a slightly injured Brian Reynolds, who's a slow starter to begin with, and now, like you said, he had an injury on top of that, and yeah, and you take away one of your spots means Sawinski gets more exposed. It means you're pretty much playing an outfield of Pham, Cruz, and Sawinski pretty much almost no matter what, and especially with G1 Bay going down to Indianapolis now,
Yeah.
a new guy coming in, like, don't know how that's going to look. Yeah, it's tough because McCutcheon takes that spot up, and you kind of want that flexibility. But I think we even said last week, until McCutcheon just kind of stops hitting and falls off of that complete cliff, having him in your lineup is something you want to have on a consistent basis.
It makes you a better team. And I think we said all offseason that the best thing that can happen for this team is to him be made obsolete. But we're not at that point. He makes you a better team, a longer lineup by having him playing every day. And yeah, G1 Bay gone. I've and we don't really have this like lined up, but I'm done with G1 Bay. I think I if he doesn't come back up to the majors, then that's fine with me. And it's for the sole purpose of what we've seen this year. Yeah, he had a good spring, but he's not producing at the plate. He doesn't really feel the position very well. And the most value that he had on this team was on the base paths. And you saw when the game was essentially on the line and McCutcheon got on base and they put him in, he needs to be that guy. The story about the 2004 Boston Red Sox when Dave Roberts came in and everybody in the stadium knew that he was going to steal second base. And it was his job just to do that. And he did it. He pulled it off. Like, that's the kind of player that G1 Bay needs to be. You need to be able to put him at first base and know with a 90% certainty that he's going to be able to steal second. And for him to start and stop with the game on the line, essentially, and not feel that comfortable with taking that base, and then finally going and coming back, and then waiting until Jack, I think it was Sawinski, walked, and then getting thrown out at third because just pushing it and not having that feel as a base runner. When you have that kind of speed and you're not hitting, and you are what should be a slap hitter, but you're trying to be a power hitter, and you can't even make it work in the outfield with all your speed, then you just don't have any use on a Major League Baseball team. And, good luck somewhere else because I just don't see him working out in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, and I can remember he I thought got injured when I was down there in Bradenton because he was trying to steal third base and got thrown out. And yeah, I mean, he did perform well. I think that, earned a spot, whether it be to underperformance by other people, just getting him that look or, whatever it was. Yeah, dude, I kind of had the same exact feeling. I was watching that and I'm just like, you are like 2/3 of the way to second base, like not that far. I mean, a little bit over halfway.
Right.
And then rushing to go back to the point where you like somewhat almost injure yourself. Shelton has to come out. The media asks Shelton about it later, and he's just like, well, what sequence are you talking about? What do you mean, what sequence are you talking about? Like, that was like one of the worst sequences on the base pass. You have stinking IKF, having, I think, more stolen bases than he had, or as many stolen bases as he had like the entire year last year. Brian Hayes stealing. I mean, it's, to me, it's like, okay, you have these guys that do not have your physical gifts and attributes. You are fast. And you have these guys that are just instinctually better and are safe, like, by anything. I mean, Cruz has all those stolen bases. He's fast. He's instinctual. It takes him 3 steps to get, to second base. I mean, if he gets on first base, he should be on second base every single time, and he has been.
Yeah.
So, But to me, like, yeah, it's just like, I mean, Bay is one of those guys that's like kills AAA hitting and, will steal a ton of bases down there and do whatever. To me, it's just like, I don't know if I need to see that again because we've seen it so much up here in Pittsburgh. And maybe he finds success as like a, pinch runner, a bench player on some other team. You know what? Great. It's just not something I really need to see again, especially when, like you said, doesn't feel the position very well, can't take advantage of his one main attribute. And then, like you said, it tries to, for some reason, when he comes up to the majors, he always tries to hit for power. When he goes back down to the minors, he goes back down to a slap hitter. I don't know if it's just like, okay, go get a change of scenery someplace else.
Yeah.
But, I mean, there's enough other guys. We've added a guy we're going to be talking about. You have, Billy Cook sitting down there. Nick York getting a little bit more run in the outfield. I think in the second game of the doubleheader today, he was playing out in right field down in Indianapolis on the day we're recording here Thursday. I'm talking like I'm talking to, everybody out there knows exactly what day I'm talking about. But yeah, I mean, so yeah, there's enough other options that are kind of out there. Are you looking for coverage of all 4 major sports leagues? NFL, NBA, MLB, and NHL. Look no further than SportsVival. At SportsVival, they are dedicated to providing quality sports analysis, up-to-date news, and original content with a focus on draft and prospects, analyzing how teams are built and how franchises evolve through their strategic decisions. Without sports, how would we survive? SportsVival, proud partners of Bucks in the Basement. Let's just talk about it. I mean, I put it out there, Alexander, and then it's Canario, a guy that, when he was with the Cubs and there was talks about either some trades, people getting dropped, whatever it may be, especially like within the last, I think it was like 2023 was the last time I really heard his name mentioned a decent amount. You looked at some video of him. The biggest thing for me is he's an all or nothing kind of guy to a degree as he's come up through the levels. Going to strike out probably around like 30% of the time. But I didn't even realize this. And I had looked at his like page. Like I said, it's maybe have been a little while. Hit 37 home runs in the minors in 2022, doing a lot of that damage at Double-A. So he's a guy that comes with some power. Yeah. Dude, I just insert him in the lineup. To me, right now, if it doesn't work out, then you just do the same thing the Mets did. You gave up cash considerations, you DFA him. But for right now, dude, see if you can hit a couple bombs.
So when I went into it, it's a small sample size. Same thing we were talking about when they picked up Horwitz. But 21 games in the majors, 0.3 B-WAR, but 260 or 286 batting average, 857 OPS. Like you said, strikeouts at the major league level so far in this cup of coffee, he's had 42.2% strikeout, but a 50% hard hit percentage. And it was something that impressed me is his spray chart. He's more up the middle kind of hitter. 69.6% of his hits have gone up the middle. But watching and talking about being an eye test kind of guy, I know you like the advanced metrics as a thing you'd like to dive into. I went to the fantastic tool that is MLB Film Room before we started recording, and I was watching, and they had some home runs that he's hit in spring training this year, but also his major league home runs. My concern is going to be how he handles heat, because the hardest thrown ball that he did damage with that I saw in the film was about 94 miles an hour. And so a lot of his first career home run came off Kyle Nicholas, and it was about 90 miles an hour. It looked like maybe a sinker or a splitter that was up and away, and he pulled it. And he's his power comes pulling, but he's getting around on these pitches that are off speed or not your typical what we see for a fastball in the major leagues now. So that'll be something that I'll keep an eye on to see if he can, because he's getting around on it. And that might be a good thing that his home runs are coming pull on slower pitches that are a bit away. And, if he can hit to the center like the metrics are showing and kind of use that whole field, then that's good. And maybe he just needs to develop into it. Again, small sample size, but I want to see how he handles fastballs at the major league level.
Yeah, and still a fairly young guy. He is actually turning. He's going to turn 25 here in about a month. So I mean, still, a very young player, and we have, I feel like some of those guys maybe that haven't had as much success. Like it would be like almost like a Leo Pagero in my mind, like
Mhm.
to a degree. But any guy that shows that amount of power makes it up to the majors. Um, yeah, I want to get a look at him, and
He
I
had a
think
pretty good
that's where
spring.
like, yeah, and I think that's where like fans like frustration will probably come into a degree is that like you have Tommy Pham who's out there who hasn't been hitting well. Like I shouldn't say hasn't been playing well, but hasn't been hitting well. And you would think that, he would go into there. But if Brian Reynolds can't throw, then maybe he goes more into the right field. But you have Kutch who can't field. So, somebody's plugging up the DH. So it's still in the end, it's not really like the best or most exciting lineup. I just don't want to see them just kind of like rot him on the bench and only bring him in pinch hit situations. I mean, he may have like an exciting home run here and there, but are you really getting the full look at the guy? And I know people have said, like, will you have, kind of some options down there, in AAA? I think that they want to get like a guy like Billy Cook going a little bit more, a guy that had a slow spring, hasn't been too many games played this year, get him going a little bit more. But then also, this is a guy that if he struggles, the DFA train is right there, and it's not like it's like nothing lost. It's those whatever it is. It's the low risk, potential high reward. It's something they've been doing for a few years here, so that's another reason why it's going to be frustrating to people. But yeah, I mean, it's a guy that you wanted. I think he got up to like about number 12 in a fairly stacked Cubs system at the time. So yeah, give him his run. He's still young. If he does well, you have control of him. I don't
Yeah,
know.
and here's the thing too is the home runs that I saw, most of them were at Wrigley in during the major leagues in the season. And PNC Park has that deeper left field, so a right-handed batter who's a pull power guy. Is that something that is not going to translate in the same kind of way? Like we talked about how Spencer Horwitz could play better by being a lefty at playing at PNC Park and playing it off the tall wall, and since a lot of his power is pull power, but is that there's a reason that the Pirates traditionally have gone after lefty bats playing at PNC Park because to have a power hitting right-hander, you really have to get a hold of the ball unless you're hooking it around the pole.
Yeah.
And I could see him getting a hold of one and putting it off the rotunda, but that's not going to be. I think he's going to have a lot of balls that would have left other yards that are just going to be long flyouts.
Just gonna kind of die in the outfield, die in that
Yeah,
notch or whatever it may be.
his first major league hit was against the Pirates as well, and that was that game at Wrigley a couple years ago where it seemed like the outfielders were slipping the entire time, and I think Reynolds was playing left at the time, and he slipped, and it was still hit to the warning track, but yeah, at PNC Park, like you said, they're just gonna die, and they're just gonna get caught by the wall or the warning track. Um, and he could potentially go to another team that if he ends up on the Astros, that would be a team that really he could maximize a lot of his potential. And I think that's something we forget about is because baseball is unique in that way, where every field is different. Well, almost every field now that the Rays are playing in an exact replica of Yankee Stadium. But the dimensions are different in every stadium. Um, that yeah, you can tailor your lineup and your roster to because you play half your games at your home stadium.
Yeah. And here's the thing is it's not like the greatest transition, whatsoever, but you're thinking about a guy that like has like the power, has everything, and that's O'Neal Cruz. O'Neal Cruz to me, like I know that he hasn't played the best defense, and I think that will come. I really do believe that will come to him, and if it doesn't come to him, and I think people in some ways like overshot it like, to a degree. I think people during the offseason said they'll mention like potential Gold Glover. They'll like go like off the rails to a degree, and it sets your sights a little bit too high. Has not played a ton of games. Came into spring training sick. Didn't get a ton of work like in the field. Just wanted to make sure his bat was going. Like I think that's stuff that will come to him where he'll be enough of an asset in the outfield that even if he doesn't help to the degree that some people were saying he might, that he won't hurt you to the degree that he has been. But for me, like if the bat plays and for O'Neal Cruz, you know, like we said, get on first base. He's been stealing like at a record setting pace, like not record setting like Ricky Henderson, but record setting for like the modern era of baseball that we're in right now. But then also has become kind of like a patient hitter, has become a guy that, we talked about last year a lot of times, like couldn't get that sacrifice fly. And instead of like absolutely trying to kill the ball, like getting a good pitch and driving it, and maybe it goes over just because you're Ono Cruz and you can just kind of flick those wrists and it might, but getting the ball out there and the home run that he hit yesterday, hitting it to the opposite field, maybe got pushed that way a little bit to the wind, not pushed out, but pushed to the side a little bit. Yeah, seeing a fairly mature hitting approach from Cruz, which will be another one of those things that, everybody talks about during the offseason, what needs to happen. It's like, well, you need to set an extra step from Cruz. And at least in this small sample size, unless he gets kind of frustrated at some point in time and starts chasing, definitely haven't seen that as much from him, and have seen him, take those walks and get on base and basically say, I can turn this into a double with my legs.
I think he's faced a lot of unfair criticism so far this season. I know that there's that lazy narrative that goes along with really the video that I saw. You know, he's so tall and his stride is so long that it's effortless. I think is probably um, a better description of it. And also, that's a bad play to try to judge him on because it was a bad send by Rebello. He was thrown out by a mile, and it was a bad send, and he was windmilled all the way around it. But I think that we've seen in his time in the major leagues that he does adjust. Remember when he first came up, he wanted to gun every ball from shortstop to first base. And I think Rowdy Tellez, we saw a few times where he would really gun it on a play that he didn't need to. And Rowdy would kind of give him the back down. It's okay. Take your time. And seeing him pal around with McCutcheon as much as he has, if McCutcheon can get in his ear and just kind of, or a veteran like Frazier playing second base and just helping him with the cutoff man and getting to the right base, I he's I think he's coachable. I think he's very coachable, and I think he gets this perception um, unfairly that he's cocky or just because he has fun and he has a smile on his face. But if you look when he's not playing well, he seems to be very hard on himself. And so I think he really wants to succeed. He really wants to do well. And I think he's coachable because we've seen his development. We've seen, like you said, become a more patient hitter, lay off breaking balls below the zone. That was his kryptonite. And we saw last year that he took a major step forward against left-handed pitchers. He is maybe not progressing at the speed that people want him to because he has all this potential and all these tools. But I think that they really need to lock him in right now before he breaks out, because otherwise he might put it together somewhere else and be that superstar that he can be with the right development, the right coaching, and the right placement.
Yeah, and that's the frustrating part to me is that he spent all last season being the guy that was called upon to be the gun. Like, if people remember, like, he was playing shortstop and he was the cutoff man for right field.
Yes. Hmm.
The amount of like additional steps and additional effort and additional, everything that he had to do to, basically, okay, if it's hit the left field, it's hit the center field, it's hit the right field, no matter what, I'm the cutoff man. And he had to be out there to be the cutoff man, even if he wasn't the cutoff man. But if that ball got in his hand, it was just basically like, I got to get this out. And I think it's a mentality of just basically like, yes, I have this ability. I have this, a gift to be able to throw the ball this fast, and to think that even if it's not going to be close, or if you should throw it to a different base or whatever, and you spend an entire year basically saying, O'Neill, throw home. I feel like that he will be able to adjust to that. It's like the ball touches your hand, it's going home. Do you know what I mean? Like, and now it's just like, okay, no. Now you have to be looking at where the runner's at. Can you throw somebody out of second base? Like, I think that stuff will come. And the other part is, I feel like that he is once again kind of a victim of his athleticism, because he will get to balls in the outfield and maybe not be able to squeeze it or make the play on it when other center fielders won't be anywhere near that ball and it's dropping. Do you know what I mean? So, like, that's like the other part of that is that he will kind of like get that residual effect of, well, he wasn't able to make that play. And my mind goes to the fact is, God, he's so gifted. He has no business even being there.
Right. And we say that with Key Brian Hayes too. He gets more errors than other third basemen would earn because he can get to balls that other people can't and just can't pull off the play. But in some cases, it may be ruled an error where other people in his position don't even touch the ball at that point. So, yeah, and I think that with him, it's another thing too. To be a professional athlete, there has to be a certain level of confidence in your own skills. And I'm sure that when he gets some of these balls and we're dogging him for throwing home, in his mind, he legitimately believes that he can make the out at home. And he has the skills to do that. And sometimes it's best just to concede and keep everything in line, because if it's going to take one heck of a play to make the out at home, those are low percentage plays. So it's just learning through experience. Like, okay, I probably can, and something that can be difficult learning a new position is they always teach you as a baseball player, visualize what you're going to do with the ball before it even comes to you on every pitch. And so he's learning a whole new set of situations. And I think, he's just having confidence in his own ability, and rightfully so, because we've seen how strong he is and what kind of arm he has. But yeah, in some cases, it comes back and bites him.
Yeah, and to give hate to pretty much your best offensive player, even though it's only a week, just kind of seems like a little bit short sighted to me. Uh, and like I said, he has been your best player, and your second best player offensively has probably been IKF. Your third best player offensively, at least in the clutch hitting part of it, not in the power hitting part of it, has been Adam Frazier. And Adam Frazier has also played some pretty good defense, other than, not listening to being called off by the outfielder, but as far as like the infield stuff that he's been doing, throwing guys out at home plate, I think he's fairly quick on the double plays, different things like that. So that's the weird part to me is like, okay, O'Neal Cruz, we were hoping for that from you. We put like you, Reynolds, a few other people that were going to be doing well. But yeah, I mean, it's really been, at least for this first week, kind of IKF and Adam Frazier holding that stuff down with, some little bits of stuff, Key with his triple the other day, a very good thing to see. But I always worry that he's going to fall back into that being caught, because if you're hitting all of your balls hard to the right side and you're not able to pull some, which he's done at times, but if you're more consistently being out there, that ends up becoming like it was even last year when he was struggling to a degree. But everybody's like saying he's going to get out of that funk because he's hitting the ball hard. 2023 at the beginning of the season, hitting the ball hard. Well, they'll just start creeping over there and doing whatever. But yeah, for me, not that I'd give like a 3 stars type of thing, but offensively, it's O'Neal, it's IKF, and Frazier with some clutch hits.
Hopefully, Hayes can find that jet stream that McCutcheon seemed to find in right center. And if he could start hitting the ball with some lift opposite field that way. And maybe we can open it up to the listeners, what I messaged you during the game the other day. I seem to remember, as I'm getting older, my memory isn't what it used to be, but I seem to remember a few years ago that there was an infielder, probably a second baseman, that just would not get called off. And you could hear the outfielders calling for the ball, and he would still take it. And there was some near misses. Was that Adam Frazier? Was that Frazier that, because Jack was obviously calling for the ball, and they both were, and he stood his ground, and Jack, ran into him, and he looked upset. And we all know at this point, if you're listening to this podcast, you know that the outfielder has priority, and that the infielder should peel off at that point when he hears the outfielder. Is he not hearing Jack, or is he just deciding that, hey, young guy, I'm going to take it, just let me, and then get mad when that happens. But it seems like I remember thinking that there was some outfielder that just refused to be called off a few years ago. And I don't remember if it was Adam Frazier or not. So if any of the listeners remember that as well, please let us know.
Yeah, absolutely let us know, because I looked into it a little bit and I remember that, but I don't remember who the person was. Frazier does get a little bit of an attitude sometimes. I did say he's like kind of like a more of a soft-spoken guy, but he was getting like a little bit of attitude with some of the runners on the Rays team in the one game. So I mean, it obviously could be, but yeah, to me, it's just like, yeah, that's defense 101. If the outfielder calls for it, center fielder has priority over the other outfielders, but any outfielder has priority over the infielders because they can see the ball better coming in on it instead of going back on it. And that's another one of those things, living within those margins.
And Cruz was right there, and the center fielder has priority over everything.
Yeah.